They thought this battle was just about legal arguments. They thought it would be settled quietly, with polished statements and carefully crafted filings, but what Justin Baldoni revealed in court has sent shockwaves through every corner of this case because according to him, Blake Lively didn't just stall. She outright declined to exchange crucial evidence when she had the chance. And now, after months of avoiding it, she is demanding to get it all, as if the rules bend to her, timing her schedule, her terms, and the courtroom reaction when this was laid out was nothing short of electric. They say the walls of the courtroom have heard every lie, every plea, every whispered confession, but what is unfolding now between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively feels like a storm even these walls have never witnessed. Because in this game of high-stakes litigation, every move is a weapon, and every silence is calculated. From the moment the case began, the tension has been building like a fuse burning slowly toward an inevitable explosion, and now Justin Baldoni has dropped a revelation that could change everything. He says that Blake Lively herself refused a key evidence exchange, one that was supposed to be routine, a mutual sharing of crucial files and communications that both sides had agreed upon early in the proceedings. And yet when it came time to make the trade, Lively's camp pulled back. No explanation, no compromise, just a firm and final no. And in the world of legal warfare, that single act sends shockwaves, because refusing to hand over evidence is not just a breach of cooperation, it is a declaration of strategy, and Baldoni is making sure the judge sees it that way. Standing before the court, his team painted the picture in meticulous detail, explaining how this evidence exchange was not only agreed upon, but also essential to ensuring fairness in the trial process. Without it, Baldoni argued, the balance tips dangerously and the integrity of the case is at risk. But here is where it gets even more gripping, because Baldoni claims that after refusing to share the evidence, Blake Lively's side turned around and demanded access to everything from his team, every file, every email, every shred of paper that could possibly give them an advantage, a move Baldoni's lawyers describe as both opportunistic and deeply hypocritical. And in the court of public opinion, those words sting even more, because they fit into a narrative that has been quietly forming about Blake Lively throughout this ordeal. A narrative of control, of calculated image management, of playing by rules that seem to shift in her favor. And if that is the perception, then this latest maneuver only cements it. The whispers started immediately as legal observers began to speculate on why Lively would block the exchange in the first place. Was there something in those files she didn't want revealed, something that could unravel the polished story her team has been pushing from the start? Or was it a bluff, a power move designed to force Baldoni into a weaker position and then turn the tables by demanding his evidence? Instead, whatever the reason, Baldoni is not letting it slide. His filing makes it clear that he sees this as a pivotal moment, one that could determine how the rest of the case unfolds. And the judge's reaction was telling, leaning forward, asking pointed questions about the agreement, about who first raised the exchange, about whether Lively's refusal was documented in writing. And when Baldoni's team produced the receipts, the courtroom grew quiet, that heavy kind of quiet where everyone knows something just shifted. And yet, as dramatic as that moment was, it is only one beat in a larger symphony of tension and strategy that has been playing out behind closed doors for months. Because while the public sees only the headlines, the real battle is fought in these procedural skirmishes, each one shaping the battlefield for the day the trial begins. And the truth is, both sides know it. Baldoni knows that losing this exchange could cripple his ability to mount the strongest case. Lively knows that holding back could protect vulnerabilities she doesn't want exposed. And somewhere in that middle ground lies the truth that the jury may never even hear, unless the judge decides otherwise. But here's where it gets more tangled, because Baldoni's legal team is hinting that this is not the first time Lively's camp has sidestepped a procedural agreement. In fact, they suggest it's part of a pattern, a series of small moves that add up to an overarching strategy of control. Keep the opponent guessing, keep them reacting, never let them set the pace. And in the high-stakes chess game of litigation, whoever controls the pace controls the board. The public reaction has been just as divided as you might expect, with some rallying behind Baldoni, praising him for calling out what they see as unfair tactics, and others defending Lively, insisting that she is simply protecting her own interests in a ruthless legal environment. But as the details trickle out, one thing becomes undeniable. The next hearing is going to be a turning point, because if the judge sides with Baldoni and orders the evidence exchange to proceed, it will be a major win for his camp, both legally and in the court of public opinion. But if the judge allows Lively's refusal to stand, then it sends a very different message, one that could embolden her strategy and make Baldoni's uphill climb even steeper. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, the story is spreading like wildfire, with legal analysts dissecting every filing, every line of the transcripts, trying to read between them for clues about what each side is holding back, and the speculation is only fueling the drama, because in the absence of hard facts, people fill in the blanks with the most explosive possibilities, and in this case, the possibilities are endless. Could the withheld evidence contain communications that contradict Lively's public statements? Could it reveal behind-the-scenes coordination that paints her in a very different light? Could it be connected to other legal battles she's been linked to over the past year, battles that her team has worked hard to keep out of the spotlight? And if so, what would that mean for the carefully cultivated image that has been both her shield and her weapon in the industry for so long? Whatever is in those files, Baldoni is making it clear that he intends to fight for it. And not just for himself, but for the principle that both sides should play by the same rules. And while that might sound like a noble stance in theory, in practice it is a line in the sand, and once drawn lines like that are not easily erased. So as this chapter of the legal saga unfolds, one thing is certain: the stakes have never been higher. And for Blake Lively, the decision to hold back could be the move that either saves her case or shatters it. And for Justin Baldoni, the fight to get that evidence could be the moment that defines whether he emerges from this battle with a victory or a scar that never fully fades, because in the end, every trial is a story, and right now this one is building toward a climax that no one can predict. But everyone will be watching. And now the courtroom air seemed to thicken with tension as Justin Baldoni's legal team made their next move, arguing that Blake Lively's refusal to hand over key evidence during the agreed-upon timeline was not just a breach of professional conduct, but a deliberate tactic designed to delay the case and gain an unfair advantage. And if you think the judge was going to just gloss over that, think again. Because according to sources inside the courthouse, the moment Baldoni's lawyer finished laying out their timeline, the room went dead silent, like everyone could feel that something irreversible had just happened, the kind of moment where the stakes suddenly become crystal clear. And this wasn't just about legal filings anymore. It was about credibility, it was about integrity, and it was about who the jury would ultimately believe. Because when Baldoni's side produced a stack of time-stamped emails that appeared to show they had repeatedly reached out to Lively's legal team weeks before the evidence exchange deadline, only to be met with silence or vague promises that went nowhere, the atmosphere in that room shifted dramatically. You could almost feel the weight of the judge's gaze settling on Blake's side of the table, and while no one is saying it out loud, the implication was clear. If you agree to an evidence exchange and then miss it without a valid reason, you are inviting suspicion, and suspicion in a high-profile defamation case like this can be just as damaging as an actual guilty verdict. So the whispers started not just in the courtroom, but in the corridors of Hollywood. Because suddenly the question wasn't just why Blake didn't hand over the evidence, but what exactly she was trying to keep from being seen. And that's when Baldoni's lawyer dropped what felt like a mini bombshell, suggesting that the withheld material might contain direct communications contradicting Blake's sworn statements in earlier filings. And if that's true, then we're talking about more than a procedural violation. We're talking about possible perjury, something that could blow this entire case wide open. Now you have to understand the optics here. Baldoni's camp has been meticulous about controlling the narrative, releasing just enough verified information to make their point while letting Blake's legal missteps speak for themselves. And in a case where the public perception is just as important as the legal outcome, that kind of strategy is pure gold. But Blake's camp isn't just sitting there taking hits. They fired back in their own filing, claiming that Baldoni's team was mischaracterizing the situation and that any delay in the evidence exchange was due to ongoing confidentiality concerns. Concerns they say are legitimate given the sensitive nature of some of the material. But here's the kicker: the court already has procedures for handling confidential materials, so the fact that those procedures weren't followed to the letter is raising eyebrows. And the more people dig into this, the messier it gets. Because if Baldoni's team is right, then this isn't just a delay tactic. It's a calculated gamble by Blake's lawyers to keep potentially damaging information out of Baldoni's hands for as long as possible, and maybe even until after the trial date is set, which would force him to fight without the full arsenal of evidence he's entitled to. But Baldoni isn't playing that game. He's demanding immediate compliance, and even hinted that if Blake's team continues to drag their feet, they could face sanctions or worse. And let me tell you, in a high-stakes celebrity legal battle, the mere mention of sanctions can send shockwaves through the opposing side, because it means the judge is being invited to step in and make a ruling that could tilt the entire case in one direction. And here's where it gets even more intense. Multiple legal analysts are now weighing in, saying that if Baldoni can prove Blake willfully withheld evidence, the court might not just punish her team procedurally, they could also instruct the jury to assume the missing material would have been unfavorable to her side, which is basically legal speak for you don't get to benefit from hiding the truth. And that is devastating for a defense, so as the filings fly back and forth, and the court calendar ticks closer to the next hearing, you can feel the anticipation building. Because everyone knows that the next few weeks could decide not just the outcome of this case, but the reputations of both Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, and maybe even some of the lawyers involved in the public is eating it up. Social media is flooded with speculation from people picking apart every sentence of the new filings, looking for clues, and already you're seeing the divide between those who think Blake is being unfairly targeted and those who believe this is proof she's been playing a dirty game all along. And with each passing day, the drip feed of information from inside the case keeps the pressure mounting until you get to the point where the court isn't just a place for legal arguments anymore, it's a stage where every move, every look, every pause is scrutinized for hidden meaning. And in a battle like that, even the smallest slip can become headline news, which is exactly what Baldoni's camp seems to be counting on. And the twist in all this is that while Blake Lively's team is trying to paint the missed evidence exchange as a harmless scheduling issue, Justin Baldoni's side is using it as the centerpiece of their broader narrative that this entire lawsuit is about one side hiding the truth while the other side fights to bring it into the light. And that framing is deadly effective in the court of public opinion, because people love a story about someone fighting uphill against a bigger, more powerful opponent. And make no mistake, Blake's image in Hollywood is that of someone untouchable, with deep connections and the kind of industry protection most actors can only dream about. So when Baldoni's lawyer stood up and told the judge that their client had bent over backwards to accommodate Blake's team rescheduling meetings, allowing for redactions, even offering to have certain sensitive documents viewed under court supervision, only to be stonewalled at the last minute, you could see the judge's expression tighten just enough to make both sides sit up a little straighter. And while no official ruling came down in that moment, the very fact that the judge didn't immediately dismiss Baldoni's complaint is telling, because in high-profile cases like this, judges often send subtle signals long before they issue formal orders, and trust me, those signals are read like scripture by both legal teams. So what exactly is in the evidence Blake doesn't want to hand over? Well, according to hints dropped in court and whispers from people who've seen the discovery requests, it could include internal messages between Blake and certain industry allies, discussing strategies to undermine Baldoni's reputation online, and in the press messages that, if authentic, could directly contradict her public statements, and sworn affidavits claiming she had no part in any smear campaign. And here's where things get even murkier. Some of those alleged communications might involve third parties who are not officially part of this lawsuit, but who have a lot to lose if their names end up in open court. Think producers, publicists, maybe even executives from streaming platforms tied to both actors. And if that's true, you begin to understand why Blake's team might be willing to take the heat for a procedural violation rather than risk those names becoming part of the public record. Because once those connections are exposed, the fallout could ripple far beyond this one case, potentially jeopardizing business deals, premieres, and endorsement contracts. And Baldoni's lawyers know it, which is why they keep pressing for immediate production of the materials, because they understand that leverage in a lawsuit is everything, and every day those documents stay hidden is a day Blake's side keeps the upper hand. But leverage can shift in an instant, and right now Baldoni's camp is betting on the court stepping in to level the playing field, and they're doing it with precision. They've filed a motion not just demanding the evidence, but asking the court to compel it under threat of sanctions and expedited deadlines. And the way they've worded it is sharp. They're essentially saying to the judge, look, we've been patient, we've been reasonable, but the other side is playing games. And the integrity of these proceedings is at stake, and that is the kind of language that gets a judge's attention, especially in a case already attracting intense media coverage. So as this motion sits on the docket waiting for a ruling, the speculation is running wild. Will the judge side with Baldoni and force Blake's team to turn over the materials immediately, or will they buy into Blake's argument that the delay is justified by confidentiality concerns? The answer could dictate the tone of the rest of this case, because if Baldoni wins this motion, it's going to send a very public message that Blake is not above the rules, and if Blake wins, it's going to reinforce her reputation for being able to maneuver around challenges with uncanny precision. And as both sides prepare for the next hearing, Hollywood insiders are bracing themselves, because they know that when the truth about what's in those withheld communications finally comes out, whether it's next week, next month, or on the witness stand, it's going to be explosive, the kind of revelation that doesn't just make headlines for a few days, but rewrites how both of these celebrities are perceived for years to come. And in the meantime, every small move is being analyzed like a chess match. From the outfits they wear to court to the language in their Instagram captions, because when you're fighting for your career as much as your legal standing, every detail counts. And right now Baldoni's side is making sure those details keep pointing back to one simple narrative: they have nothing to hide, while Blake's team is fighting to keep the most important evidence under wraps. And that kind of contrast is the sort of thing jurors remember. And now, with the next hearing looming like a storm on the horizon, both sides are standing at the edge of a moment that could define not just this case, but the way the industry handles disputes like this for years to come. Because if Baldoni wins, and the court orders the release of the withheld evidence, it won't just be a legal victory. It will be a narrative shift overnight. Blake's carefully managed image could take a hit that no publicist spin, no charity appearance, no glossy magazine cover could fully erase. And the whispers inside Hollywood boardrooms say the real fear isn't just about what's in those emails or messages, it's about what they represent, that the old rules of protecting the elite by burying inconvenient truths might be cracking in real time. And if Blake's team somehow holds the line and keeps those documents sealed, they still face the lingering question of why they fought so hard to hide them. And in the court of public opinion, unanswered questions have a way of becoming their own form of judgment. And as the world watches, from Twitter threads to late-night talk shows to podcasts dissecting every move, the truth is that neither side can claim a total win unless they also win the story that follows. Because in the age of viral receipts and endless reposts, facts are only half the battle, perception is the other half, and it moves faster than any legal filing. So here we are waiting for a decision that could drop at any moment, with fans, allies, and rivals refreshing their feeds, ready to pounce on whatever happens next. Baldoni's camp is betting on transparency and moral high ground. Blake's camp is betting on controlled messaging and procedural shields. And somewhere between those two strategies lies the reality that when the curtain finally gets pulled back, when the judge finally rules, when the sealed becomes unsealed, someone's version of events will collapse under its own weight, and there will be no going back. Because the internet doesn't forget, and Hollywood never really forgives.